Vicky already asks.
Hello, everyone. Hello, Timo. How are you?
Hi, how are you doing? I'm fine.
I'm really good because we nearly forgot. Well, I nearly forgot to press the go live button because I was telling Timo about how gorgeous Daniel Craig looked in James Bond, and I got a bit carried away. So at least I remember to hit the live. So I'm in a very good mood now. I have beautiful images in front of me. So, how is everyone who's joining us? Do put in the chat where you're from and what you're doing. And hi, Andrea. Thank you so much for joining
Yes.
us.
And hi, Indigo. Thank you very much again. Vicky asks already an amazing question from the very beginning. You have
Well,
to wait
before we start,
slightly. We will
before
answer all that. So it's you asked the perfect question, yes, but we will answer all that. The whole video is about that. So all good.
yes. So what we are going to be talking about today, we had a change of plan based on some questions we've been having. Now, what we wanted to talk about today is we're talking mainly about cats and dogs, but you can apply this principles to other species as well. Is we're talking about the really, really important subject of one, how do you know whether your animal is a healthy weight? And secondly, if they're not, what are your options to do about it? Because we know, Timo, don't we, that weight is far more than just being aesthetically pleasing, isn't it? It's got far more consequences.
That's correct. Mainly the metabolic consequences, but also so many, like humans, there are so many different types. Dog breeds have totally different muscle fat ratios or muscle bone ratios that for many people it's so hard to determine are they actually overweight. When you look at the bulldog, you will always think that it's overweight because it doesn't like to move, it's just lazy. But actually, the amount of muscle it packs compared to its old bone is so high that most of the time a bulldog is not overweight, even if you think it is. On the other hand, you can have a very slim looking dog, might be overweight, and you might think it's totally normal.
Yeah, and this is really important because all of us can Google or DuckDuckGo, weight charts, and you get the standard diagrams for, how to check whether your dog or cat's overweight. But as you said, that can be really misleading because every breed of dog or cat is so, so different. So, talk us through, Timo. First of all, why is it so important that we make sure our animals and ourselves are a healthy weight?
Okay, so weight has metabolic cost. So when you carry it with you, you have to work extra for it. The problem is fat is hydrophobe. That means fat and water doesn't mix well with each other. And the blood is mostly made out of water. So that means the more fat tissue you have, the less blood you have per kilogram. So although you have to carry more, now you have less blood. It sounds funky, but what it does is it's heavy on your heart, it's heavy on your hormonal system, and once the muscle starts to be saturated with the fat, then the cells cannot really absorb anything else because again the blood is water based. So this is also one of the main reasons of how humans get diabetes and how animals get really fatigued easily. They don't want to move anymore because their muscles are not getting any oxygen and nutrients from the blood. So it's super important. Second thing is fat tissue itself works like a hormonal gland. So the more fat, the more internal fat there is, the more regulations change that have an impact on the mood, on the bone density, on activity level, on productive reproductivity. So the wish for having sex for a dog when they are overweight is so lower than the one that is fit. So all of them are intertwined. So
It's a really great point. I hadn't thought about the blood link. And of course, we all know that the blood is the life force, the sort of blood, but also the interstitial fluid must be affected by this big time as well. And I know Dr. Robert O. Young, who I've had some amazing conversations with, is really trying to raise the awareness of the importance of the interstitial fluid. But I hadn't thought of that blood water issue before. That's such a good point.
Well, look, there is a reason why we have lipoproteins. So when you talk about high testosterone, HDL, LDL, right? This is not cholesterol itself. It's bound by a protein. Why? Because the fat itself would be blood incompatible. So the body tries to cover the fat with something that makes it blood compatible, right? That's why they are lipoproteins, not lipid fat by itself. And once you understand that, you understand the impact of water-based animals and how much fat they have to have in their diet to have a normal ratio. Because if you feed too much fat, then you take away the water and everything that comes from the water to the system away.
Yeah.
But same goes for the right fat ratio. For instance, if you buy low-fat milk or almost 0.5 milk, all of the important minerals and vitamins that are in the milk are bound to fat. So when you remove the fat, you remove them all. Suddenly you have a milk that is milk protein inside, but nothing else.
Yeah.
So it's
really important. Lovely to see everyone. Thank you so much for joining us in the chat. Now, what we're going to do today with the chat, guys, please keep putting your questions in there, because Timo and I are going to run through a bit of the subject matter, and then we're going to stop and go through all your questions. So put them in there and don't think we're ignoring you. I'm taking note of them all, and then we'll go back up to the top and start running through the questions, if that's all right with you, Timo. So let's talk about cats and dogs separately. How is someone going to determine if their cat or dog is a healthy weight?
Okay. So for dogs, there are visual rules, easy to follow. For cats, there are also visual clues, but some of the cats have so much fur, however you pronounce it, fur, that is really hard to determine if they are overweight or not. That's why you check their belly and how much it is hanging, because cats have always a hanging system and dogs don't have that hanging belly. And that hanging under the chest and belly has a huge indicator, is a huge indicator for the weight. So let's start with the dogs. Normally, you should see or feel, if they have a very thick coat, the last 2 to 3 ribs with your finger. If you can see them perfectly with the shadows and everything, and the rest is disappearing slowly, and there's enough muscles on the chest, everything's perfectly fine. Except if it's a dog that is a wind dog. That means if it's a hound, except Basset is also a hound, but a different one, and they are mostly showing most of their ribs. For them, you have to check the spine. If the spine is very visible and very prominent, then they are too skinny. They have to put on weight. But if the spine looks normal and you can see the muscles left and right covering the spine, but you see some ribs, that's all good.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
And
let us know in the chat whether this is making sense to you as well. Yeah.
Yeah. So if all the ribs are covered, you are already in a territory that is overweight. It's not dangerously overweight, but you are already there. So if you cannot see the muscles on the spine anymore, if the dog is moving, but you don't see the muscles moving on the spine, and the ribs are covered, you are on the territory that the internal fat took over, for sure. So it doesn't really have to be a really fat lab to be overweight. When the ribs are gone and the muscles on the top are gone, you are dealing already with overweight. Now, of course, you can check the chin and the typical cheeks, but some dogs are naturally like that, like a boxer or something. That is not a very good indicator. But you can see
my cheeks. I was always called hamster cheeks. So
yeah, me and my younger cheeks. Yeah. But the best indicator is really if you can feel and see the top muscles, the spine, and the ribs. So Let's take a dog like a bulldog, right? So if you check the face, it's overweight. If you check the build, it's overweight. Well, actually, if you check the ribs and if you look at the spine, most of them are not overweight. They are just built really, really big,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely. Okay.
Then, last thing about it, and there are some dogs with a very loose skin, like Sharpei or some Mastiffs. They are really muscular. They are not overweight, but they have a hanging coat. So you have to be careful with them too. Put your finger on the ribs, and if you can feel the ribs perfectly on the last 2 3 ones, they are good in weight. If it's not feel too overweight, and if it's very skinny on the sides, you will feel it, although they have a hanging loose coat or skin.
Yeah. And I think weight is a very sensitive issue for a lot of people, because a lot of people, particularly if they're carrying a bit of extra weight themselves, they find it very difficult if you raise the subject of weight with their dogs or cats. But as a responsible parent, it's so important. And, sometimes making that decision about our pets can also be really helpful for ourselves, because the same applies to us. We're not talking about the cosmetic looks of extra weight. We're talking about the health benefits of actually being a healthy weight for whatever species you are is so important. Now, what
That is
about
correct.
cats, Timo? Because cats are quite tricky, aren't they? And I am taking note of all your questions, people, so keep them coming. Thank you. Yeah.
So this is a matter that's mostly overlooked, especially by the cat parents, and the vets don't like to talk about it much because cat parents are mostly reacting to it, not so, how do you say it, friendly.
Yeah.
But almost every cat, if it's nurtured, and most of the cats then which don't go out themselves, are slightly or really overweight. The reason for that is not just they don't move much, but cats are high oxidizers. That means they are extremely powerful and explosive animals that can burn a lot of energy very quickly. So they have to rest a lot. So they don't need much of the sport as we think for humans. But what they eat has to contain certain nutrients to keep the fat deposition in check. So, um, one nutrient, there are two nutrients that are super important, or three, but let's say two. One is, of course, the amount of directly protein that is in the food and absence of fat, which is super important. I tell you, your cat cannot get overweight if it eats the right ratio of protein and fat, if the protein is good quality, which opens up the next one. The second one is taurine. So the taurine is the amino acid like amino acid that is not a real amino acid, but mostly counts like one, which directly controls the fat burning metabolism. So that means even if there is fat in the food and the food has higher energy than the cat normally needs, the taurine can actively stop the fat from being absorbed or you stored, because it just blocks the way of storing fat. The fat cannot be stored anymore, right? So that means for cats, it's super important, not just because with dogs, you can always get out, you can feed a bit less and everything. There are a lot of options to get them fit again. But cats don't really act as companion for sports or any type of major play on every day. Some cats are playful, but that's how long per day can a cat play? Would a cat play? So that's why it's more important to check how you feed the cat than how I can move it more towards weight. But how do we check the weight of a cat? So first thing is you have to check how much it is hanging under their chest and belly. Of course, you have to take care of the fur, but you have to have it in your hands and see how loose it is. So when you have it loose, if it's really wrinkly but not really heavy, that's normal for a lot of cats. But if it's really heavy and dense, then your cat is definitely overweight.
Yeah.
Some older cats, if they're nurtured, they are prone to it. So you cannot change it because they have the hormonal imbalance, not enough growth factors, and which will cause that. So it's almost impossible to stop it. So, but you can keep it at minimum by feeding the highest quality food. For natural cats that go out and hunt and run, you normally don't have real overweight weight issues with them. They will take care of that.
And it's very normal, isn't it, for all animals, but particularly less so now domesticated dogs, because their routine tends to be more constant. But for, say, a cat like mine, you've been to stay at mine a few times, Timo, and you see my cats are out all the time hunting and everything.
Yeah.
It's normal, isn't it, for a cat in that environment for their weight to fluctuate quite a bit.
That's correct, between summer and winter for sure, because cats don't have a coat. So they don't take a winter coat when they get out. So they need extra fat deposit to keep them warm. Because don't forget, muscles need mostly quick energy sources. So this is protein, sugar, whatever. For cats, mostly protein. But fat is the best low energy, slow energy source. So why I am telling that? A liver can live only on fat as energy source. Would be zero problem. A muscle can't. So if in the winter the cat needs produce more energy in their body, of course they need more fat and protein, but their organs can run then only on the fat. So the muscles can burn most of the protein for creating heat. Does it make sense?
Yeah.
So that's why
Let's know in the chat if it was making sense to you. Yeah.
So that means that's why they are building up more and more and more and more fat during summer towards winter, and then in winter they have enough, not just insulation material, but enough material to get the basic energy needs going, and everything else they can hunt and they can get is used to produce energy and be active.
Yeah. Now, because it fits in so nicely with this question, and we'll stop and go through the other rest of questions in a minute. Linda's asking about what should an average weight for a healthy cat be. Now, I would like to say one thing before you start off there. There is no such thing as an average weight for a healthy cat. That's like saying what is an average weight for a human, even if you
73, by the way.
Pardon?
73, but the difference is between.
So I'm 5'6", and some of my friends are 5'2", and we could both. So you can't say a healthy weight. It depends on the structure and everything else. So
that's correct.
That's why it's really important. We get so hung up by saying a cat or a dog should be this weight, and it's completely ludicrous. Because even if you take a Labrador, the bone structure of a show Labrador and the bone structure of a working Labrador are completely different.
Yeah.
So adult male working Labrador, a healthy weight would be different to a show. So this is why Timo and I are saying to you, how do you check if your individual animal is a healthy weight? Because we need to look at, the individual animal, the breed, the fur, the age, etc. No, Linda, it's not a criticism at all. It's because that you'll see charts everywhere of, your cat should be this weight.
Yeah.
It's not a criticism of you at all. It's because that's the way we're led to believe. But it's very, very important that we look at every cat as an individual and then follow Timo's advice about how do you check that. And particularly also, Timo, to notice whether your pet is gaining weight or losing weight, because that can be a sign that something's wrong, isn't it?
That's correct, especially if you had some operations, some serious vaccination, some deworming periods, and sometimes change of location. This can all have a huge impact emotionally, physically, or hormonally, and that might change a lot of things. So it's always good to look at the belly, how much it is hanging. You have to know your cat. Every time you touch your cat, try to figure out, although cats don't like to let you touch there, but you can do it not too deliberately. It's important to know that. But so
Sure.
Linda, this is a question that we get a lot, and for dogs also. There is no such thing, because as I said, you can have in the same size a boxer and a whippet, and they will have totally different weight. because one has huge muscles made to just jump and dash, and the other one has very lean and very good muscles to keep it as fast as possible for the longest time as possible. So they are totally different builds. And your cat, there are no standards in cats. Even we talk about breeds with cats, 95% all cats are mixture of something, and there is no real like 100% this has to be the norm, this. It's there are so many out of norm cats. And I can tell you, I know a 20-kilo cat, 20 kilogram. And it was a huge, its name was Lion, but it looked like a tiger. It's funny. But it was so big that it scared off every dog. The calmest thing in the world. And 20 kilos. And it was not overweight. 20 kilos.
Wow. I'd
Yeah.
love to have seen that cat. How
Yeah, it's
magnificent.
when I was yeah, I met the cat when I was like 12 or 11, and it was my uncle's cat, and amazing, like amazing.
Yeah, so these are really good questions, because what I encourage people to do in a couple of weeks' time, Timo and I are going to do a video where we'll play a video as well. I've just got to work out how to do it technically on StreamYard, which is why we didn't do it today, showing you how to check a cat and a dog. I just needed to be a bit more prepared, because the main thing is look at trends, look at energy levels. So shall we go through a few of the questions, Timo, before we go on to exercise and how that's related? Is that all right with you? So
All right, yeah.
I'm going to scroll up to the top and go through them in order as fairness. So we've got Vicky's question here. 11-year-old Bichon Shih Tzu, feed her raw food. She's lost a fair bit of weight. I can feel her ribs. I'm feeding her a lot. Should she?
Yeah, so yes, you should be concerned because you are feeding something that doesn't cover the energy cost. So you are feeding right now something not important if it's raw or not. It doesn't fulfill, it doesn't cover the base energetic metabolic needs. So you have to check what you're feeding and if it's absorbable, because if it's high in fat, it might be not absorbable. Some dogs don't absorb fat very well, and everything goes to the toilet or wherever. And sometimes the calculation of the raw food is not correct because it might have more water than it says. 10%, up to 10% is legal. It might have less energy than it says. Up to 10% is legal. And if you add on these 10%, yeah, then you have 10% less than always. Then it's a problem. So what I would suggest, check the food, check the calories. Then we have a caloric, how do you say it, label.
Yeah.
And I have to know the normal weight of your bichon, and I would tell you, if you just check it, I can tell you how many calories it needs, and then you can go from there. So it's, yeah.
Yeah, great advice. I would also add, Vicky, so I see this quite a lot with people, and I find it fascinating because as a human, I have never weighed food in my life. You know, perhaps I might be better off if I did occasionally, but I don't. You know, if I'm putting on weight, if my jeans are too tight, I do more exercise. I very rarely cut my food down. So what I would say is, first of all, don't always go by the feeding guidelines, because the feeding guidelines are only guidelines. Secondly, a few videos back, one of our first videos about food and feeding, we said, you know, just because it's raw doesn't, you know, there's a huge variety in the qualities of raw. So as Timo said, really check the ingredients, check, because it could be something in the balance that isn't suiting her. Thirdly, Timo, we you know, Vicky could be looking at how the dog's behaving, couldn't she, as well, energy-wise? Does she seem vibrant? Are the other vitals? Is her nose glossy? Is she energetic? Is she bright, alert? Is she always hungry?
How's the coat? How's the coat? Is the coat?
How's the coat? Yeah. And then, of course, we would also, if all of those are okay, I would also take a poo sample and just do a parasite test as well.
That's correct.
Worm, I would actually take a poo sample. There's plenty of places, depending where you are. Your vet will do it. There's plenty of online places where you can get it analysed, because you do want to just make sure that you're not sort of ruling out sort of parasites as well. But a lot of it, we want to look at also how's her vibrancy as well, to see, you know, is she feeling well or not?
Yeah.
So that's really, really good. So let us know how she gets on, Vicky.
Oh, Vicky, one last question. Maybe you can put it into the comments. Do you started to have weight loss after you started feeding raw, or was it you were always feeding raw and it's just kicked in? Or please let us know, because there might be some connection between there too.
Yeah, that's great, because that's a very good point, because a lot of people have only recently transitioned to a new diet, and it's a bit like the difference between if you go to eating, I don't know everyone around the world, but if you go to really processed breakfast cereal, like in the UK, we have something called Cocoa Pops, which are just complete crap cereal covered in chocolate. You can have, say, I'm having a bowl of those in the morning. And if you go from that to, say, organic porridge oats with no cereal, to having the same less size bowl, but you're not going to be putting on as much weight with it. So whether you've recently transferred. Now, Toman 1974 is asking, now what they have said, there's another one that goes with it. So if you look at this question, so for Border Terrier, I've been cooking 80-20 hamburger or turkey with white rice, eggs and peas or carrots. And then the next bit of his thing, Timo, has recently got blood work done, everything back for a 13-year-old dog. I'd like to discuss that. That's an important thing. Can we provide some input on whether that's a healthy, balanced diet?
So yes and no. You do a lot of things right, but some things are a bit iffy. So rice is not a very good food for dogs. And the reason for that is it's high in starch. It is harder to digest. And peas are also, green peas are okay somewhere, but they are not that important. So if you would increase the amount of meat, add 10% liver, and decrease the amount of rice and peas, you will come to a safer place. But we have a whole course about it. Of course, you can check it if you wish to. And 80-20, I don't know what you mean with the 80-20. Which part is 80? Which one's 20? Eggs are okay.
I'm
I wouldn't
assuming
use it
he
daily.
means 80% meat and 20% consisting of the rice, eggs, peas, carrots. But correct.
Yeah, that would be not that bad. Again, if you drop the rice and the peas, from time to time, you are coming to a very good spot actually. And that's why I'm sure that your terriers, most of the needs are covered well, but you can do better than that for sure. But
So,
you are
yeah,
doing much better than 99% of everyone. So I
yeah.
don't want to criticize anything. I'm just saying there is some room for improvement, but you are doing actually not too bad.
So if you have a look at Toman 1974 at our dog course that Andrew's put the link in the chats and it's under the video, and we've still got the balls 10 for the 10% off the cat and dog. If you want to just make the next level of improvements, you'd really benefit from doing that course, because it will give you lots of hints. It goes into good details why certain things are good and bad, and then some great recipe. Now I'm just going to go back to Vicky that we've just discussed. She was feeding her kibble. But because of 2 years of scratching itching, she started feeding her the raw food from our dog course a couple of months ago. And that would be maximum a couple of months, because it hasn't been out that long, the course.
That's correct. But okay, first of all, please let us know what you're typically feeding. Just send us the typical ingredients, what you would use, generally speaking. Let's see if I can find anything there. And if you think that the way we put the food is not giving enough, just increase by 10% and see if you are starting to see the reversal of the weight loss. And second thing, normally you don't stop with the kibble immediately and start with the raw immediately. You have a transition plan from 0 to 6 weeks and up to 3 months. And because you have to change the bacteria, so the bacteria has to, the microbiome has to adjust, because the microbiome from feeding with kibble is totally different than the ones with the raw, and they have to exchange and repopulate and get a different balance. But yeah, let us know.
Yeah, so I would say probably, Vicky, if you up the amount, because also if she's been used to eating kibble, there'll be a lot of fillers there, and it's a bit like, us eating Mars bars sort of thing. So quite often when you go on, and as her microbiome rebalances, she'll absorb the food better and better. And if you're still having problems with that, go and have a look at the video we did, was it a couple of weeks ago, on the microbiome?
Yeah.
And you'll find some really helpful tips in there about things you can do. So it doesn't sound like, it just sounds like she needs a bit more, and perhaps her microbiome just needs to adjust as well. Now, we've got a lovely question here from Robin, wondering if switching to real food for my Yorkie would help him, as he's always wanting to eat. We get a lot of questions here about dogs or cats that are constantly hungry.
Yeah. So there are two things to say. First of all, normally the digestive tract decides if you're hungry or not, although we think that we think we have the control over our hunger, or it's if we feel the stomach. But there are only two things that makes you hungry. One, the drop in blood sugar or protein level. And second, what your digestive tract bacteria wants. So even if you eat till here, if you can fulfill what your bacteria need, then you feel still hungry. I can give you a good example. Humans need a bit more carbohydrates to be happy. So if you eat a huge chunk of meat and then you are looking for dessert, because that will give you the signal that you had enough energy from your food, although the steak has enough energy from the food, but your body doesn't know it. Your body only knows it because it can taste the sugar. So same goes for the dog. So when the bacteria says, oh no, we want more of this thing because the kibble has a lot of starch, and the bacteria feed on starch, they are asking more for it. So the dog is constantly hungry.
Yeah.
So once you change to a better diet and you drop the starch, then the bacteria change the next 6 weeks to 3 months. And then suddenly the dog will be satiated. Dogs always want to eat. Every carnivore always wants to eat, but it will not be really crazy about food, craving. More, it will be just happy and try to catch an extra prey when the time comes. It's a different attitude.
And I can vouch for this. It makes such a huge difference, because all my cats and dogs are rescues, and they sort of come from a kibble-based diet. And then as I switch them, it just makes all the difference. But I think, Robin, just like we were saying to the early lady, if you've been on kibble, when you do the course, it will tell you to transition slowly over a few weeks so that your dog's microbiome gets used to it. And it will make a huge difference. Now, a question here from Tiger Speak. There's two parts to this. So if you read this first, Timo, 4-year-old cat who was bottle fed seems to have weak eyes. So then I asked, what was he fed? And then the response is fancy feast, salmon pate and canned tuna. So
whoa, that's heavy. So the site might be already disturbed and maybe permanently damaged by heavy metals, pollution in the food. It's a possibility. It's also possible that it comes back. So you have to drop the amount of fat for sure in the food and go to healthy bird-based diet, mostly turkey, chicken, whatever you can. Get some livers. You can go up to 20% for a short while, but slowly increase the amount and get the nutrients in and see how fast the eyes get better. But canned tuna is not the best
isn't
food.
it? Because obviously there's a huge risk that more health on this diet. And again, Tiger Speak, when we're doing this, we're really grateful for people's honesty. This is not a criticism, because we're all doing the best we can. But there will be a big lack of taurine in this diet, won't there, of natural taurine, which can lead on to other even more serious problems. So it's actually urgent that you change on to a better diet for your cat.
That is correct. So again, heart and liver, super important. Bird heart, bird liver will increase the amount of taurine. You can, if you want to give fish, that is okay. You can do it once per week, and that should be a slightly cooked, a 5-minute boiling time. For sardines, the best would be, of course, anchovy, dried or fresh, frozen, that you cook yourself.
Yeah, and not salted. So again, you'll find lots of details in the cat nutrition course, because taurine deficiency is so serious and we're seeing so much of it. It's really good that you've noticed this. So this is a question where, when people ask about the supplements, we always go to the diet first, and then a supplement is supplement to a good diet. It's not to replace a good diet. So thank you so much for raising that, because you can make a huge difference to your cat's health. Now, starting with my nutrition, a female cat that's a little overweight, she's got a belly. Cat should be slender, I think, but my male cat is on the underweight side. So yeah, this is an issue where you've got cats that are obviously multi-hat cat households where you're having to leave the food down. So yeah.
Yeah, so it's if okay, again, hormonal things, right? If they were nurtured, there was an operation in the past that changes the way their hormones work. It's possible that the male cat has a higher thyroid activity and always stays a bit lean because it cannot put on weight. The body refuses to put on weight, and the female cat might have higher amount of cortisol and lower levels of thyroid that goes always to the put some extra weight level. So it's hard to balance it. I'm sorry, I cannot do it for you. And actually, nobody can, because the only person who can experiment with it and see where it's going is you. So you can slightly add to one and slightly remove from one and see what kind of balance you can get there. But it's tricky for sure.
I have the same issue starting with my nutrition. And what I do is I make sure it's all about the quality of the food that you're putting down. So the better the quality, the more likely they are to regulate their weight really effectively. So, for example, we had a beautiful wildcat that adopted us last Christmas. And when she came to us, she was Australian. She was so unwell and really, really thin. And in quite a horrible state actually, but I couldn't handle her. She was really wild. And now she's adopted us and come into the house and she's on a healthy diet. She went from really skinny to quite overweight because she was so desperate, obviously after goodness knows how long of feeding herself. And now she's regulated herself really nicely. But it took, because if you've had an animal like that that's been starved, they can, be so grateful to be having regular food that they can find. But now after a while, now she knows she's getting that consistency. So I do have to, it is tricky, but I do have to sort of, when the skinny one comes in, put an extra bowl up somewhere else for them as well. And that does. I just wanted to mention this, Timo, because the clean slate from the roots, that the link is under all my videos. Now, for the person with their tiger speak with your cat that's got the eye issue, because he's saying, Timo, that tiger speak saying the cat's eyes are very sensitive to light.
Might be a heavy metal issue for sure.
Yeah, heavy metal issue. So I would really recommend Tiger Speak or anyone else whose cats have been on a processed diet, which is a lot of us and dogs, because, it's what we've been taught to do for a long while. This clean slate product I'm finding really, really good. And it's very easy just to add a few drops, depending on the weight of your dog and cat. I can advise on that. But typically for a cat, it would be 3 drops twice a day added onto their food. And I just prepare their food and then drop it at the top, so I know they're going to eat it. And then with dogs, depending on the size of the dog, sort of 3 to 6 drops twice a day on their food. 6 drops for a really big dog, 2 to 3 drops for a little dog. I really rate this product from the experience I've had so far. So I think that's really important, because you do have to pull those toxins safely out of the body. So I would try that.
By the way, I want to say something about toxins and removing toxins. Detox is a word that the medical world don't like at all, and the fitness wellness world overuse. So in this case, we are not talking about detoxing and cleaning up your body in a spiritual way, or let's say in a meditation way. Or this is really cells having heavy metal deposits. The zeolite comes, picks it up, gets out with it. So this is medical detoxification of the cells. It's not I just want to give it a bit more credibility in the sense, like it's a medical thing happening. It's not a esoteric detoxification, let's say.
Yeah, and I've just found it so effective, because the problem is, all of us, obviously all our situations slightly different, but all of us, we've got contaminations of food in the air. Before we came online, I was talking to Timo about one of my horses, because we're having a lot of horses in the UK go down with certain conditions. We've got so many. Now, we can't prove what it's from, but we've had a lot of chemtrails, a lot of air pollution. etc. So the bodies are bombarded from food, from air, from water, from stress, from EMF, from everything. So, it's very difficult for us. We can't avoid chemicals. So therefore, we do sometimes have to use these extra things to sort of take the nasties out. And that's really, really important.
Wait a second. Robin said something very interesting. I think it's worth mentioning. Thanks for that. Yes. So some cats and dogs will eat because of boredom and just because they can. So if it's there always, and they will have always a chance to go back and sniff and eat, and this will just destroy their blood level, sugar level regulation. So because their pancreas are not made to eat constantly. And that's why it's very good that feeding cats, especially cats, twice a day, with just watching their activity time. It's super, super important. It's a very good tip. Thanks, Robin.
Yeah, very, very good. I wish I could do that more with mine, but anyone who knows my Idris knows he's a whirlwind himself, and I have no control when he's going to come home. So yeah, now this is a good one, and then I'm going to come back. I'm going to come on to Karen's question. So Timo, the third eye has started to appear.
Well, I cannot comment. We have to see it, but yeah, it's really hard to give any comment from here.
So we'd need a bit more detail about
That's correct. Yes, and images for sure.
Yeah. Okay. So Karen's asking, can she put anything in the water for cats? Well, it depends what you're looking to do. But if you're talking, Karen, about to detoxification, now I cannot say this on YouTube, so I'm going to hold it up. We all know that I love this stuff. If you don't know what it is, go onto my Telegram channel. Andrea, the Wonder Woman, has done a brilliant tag on there. I did a live last Friday where I talked about this a lot, but I'm not allowed to say it on this platform. So what I always do personally is if I'm putting something in my animal's water, I have two separate bowls where I have one with that in and one without it in, because I want them to be able to choose which they drink. The reason for that is it's really important you don't stop your animal's drinking. You can put the clean slate from root in the water as well. But the problem I find with cats and dogs is it's impossible to tell how much they're drinking. So this cannot be used in food. It has to go in water. Okay. And if you've got a serious health condition, there's different ways of using it rather than for maintenance. So for maintenance, just putting the right amount in your cat's water that I can't discuss here is really important. And if they've got a particular health condition, you need to dose it regularly throughout the day. And there's instructions on that in the introductory course that if you go to the health products, I'll show you in a minute, actually, before we end. So because this product is used up within an hour in the body. So if you're using it for maintenance, it's one thing. If you're using it because it basically adds oxygen into the body, it's very good for decontaminating. As Andrew's been drinking it all day, and I'm drinking mine, because this time of year is a natural time, folks, when the leaves come off the trees and the leaves come on the trees, it's a natural time for the body to be getting rid of anything that it doesn't want to carry forward into the winter.
I have a question.
Yeah.
What about people who live in the tropics? They don't have this.
No, the people who live in the tropics don't have the same challenges of the seasons that put different stresses on the body. So they would be more consistent throughout the year. But those people that live in strong seasonal places, there's sort of years of traditional medicine that shows, just like when the leaves, deciduous trees, leave their leaves and they shed the toxins and the waste products in the leaves. Similarly, at this time of year, a lot of people find they're coming down with colds or flus or other little sniffles and things. And that's the body's natural way of saying, I don't want to take these toxins into the winter. I'm getting rid of them before I sort of boost up. So there's lots we can do about that. Hi, Bob.
Hi, Bob. I want to tell you something about the leaves. So I was walking to the kindergarten with my boys yesterday. I had the little one, the 2.5-year-old one, on my shoulders. He saw all the red and yellow leaves on the floor, and he said, "Look, father, a lot of salad."
Yeah.
So sweet. So, yeah.
Okay.
So,
A couple more questions, and then we need to finish off with the exercise stuff at top of our talk, because that's very important as well,
yeah.
that people don't go mad with it. So let's look at Linda's question. One of my cats is having bloods done to check for arthritis. Any advice moving forwards? Yes, I've got loads, but you carry on, Timo.
Yeah, first, I want to say that arthritis can have a lot of reasons from, I don't want to say it, but from vaccination to carbohydrates to processed carbohydrates to overcooked proteins to heavy metals to
Treatments and tick treatments and worming.
yeah, and glyphosates and artificial fertilizers that have a huge impact on copper and zinc, which are really connected to the joints and have a huge impact there, or sulfur, and all of them this is so huge. It's really, yeah. What I can suggest is, let's go one by one and correct all these things one by one. At the end, you will have a far better time. So instead of trying to pinpoint the reason, correct everything, clean slate, although it doesn't fit here.
Clean
But
slate, already doing the diet. Can
yeah.
I
So
say from personal experience? So I used to do a lot of gymnastics in my youth and horse riding, and my hips were pretty shot. We always say in my family, because my sister, my mum have had hip replacements, so if we were Labradors, we wouldn't be allowed to breed because we'd never pass the hip scoring.
yeah.
So anyway, I was told about 10 years ago that I needed a double hip replacement because my hips were so bad, and they were really bad. I had MRI scans and x-rays and things, and they were causing me a lot of pain. So this is how I actually got into the Purium and Platinum products, because I thought I was eating a really good diet, but I basically wasn't, because my body was too acidic. So I was thinking, there's no way. Well, I couldn't have a double hip replacement because I live in the middle of nowhere. I've got animals to look after, children to look after. I was working full time. So I thought that's not an option. So I thought I'd do it diet wise. I didn't even go down the supplement route in this. So what I did is I poured a lot of green products into my diet. That's when I got in with Purium and Platinum. I think a lot of you have probably been on my talks with Andy. By the way, this isn't a ghost. It's my incense stick. Everyone always thinks it's a ghost. And my hip pain completely went. And now, 10 years later, I can't do the side splits anymore, but I can do everything. I have no hip pain at all. And when I notice it going up again, my sort of arthritis that was so bad, they were going to pay for me to have 2 hip replacements, the National Health Service. I just think that's a reminder to me that my diet's got a bit acidic and I need to address it. So yes, there's lots of supplements I can recommend, Linda, but go right back to basics of you've already done the diet. I would try the clean slate detox, look at any chemicals that you're putting in or on your cat.
And around
Cleaning products, air fresheners, anything that you or your neighbours might be using in the garden. And let's get those toxins out, and you'd be amazed. I do love CBD oil for cats, if it's an organic full spectrum one that they can self-select off your hand. And I also, to help you along the way, love this and the clean slate. So, yeah, so this is fantastic. Really good things. So, last one about this, and then we'll get on to the exercise. What do you think about carbon C60 for pets?
Oh, this is a big discussion. This is I have zero experience with it, and you have to try it for yourself. But yeah, because I have zero experience with it, I will not recommend it or just recommend against it. But I would say test it and let me know.
Yeah, exactly. So I haven't used it at all, interestingly. And it's also interesting because as I'm a herbalist and I've tried most things, it's quite interesting that I haven't been drawn to use that, but I can't comment one way or the other either. So please do let us know. I think it's really important when you're trying these things to make really good diary notes so that you can really see what you are noticing. So for example, when I started my nearly 16-year-old lab on the clean slate, my husband's really skeptical about a lot of stuff. and I'm quite enthusiastic when I understand a product. I'm sort of willing it to work, whilst he's completely the opposite. He assumes nothing's going to work. So it's quite a good balance. And we noticed a huge improvement in her. I can really say we really did notice a difference. And my mother's had the same experience with one of her 16-year-old dogs as well. So that gives me a lot of confidence. Yeah, so let's just go on before we finish, because we're nearly at 50 minutes. Exercise and weight management. Let's start with dogs, because that's a bit easier.
Can I compare them first? So let's look at the nature. You have dogs in wolves, in packs, go, hunt, roam, try to find. Then you have Labradors who can walk up to 60 kilometers per day, or other dogs that can hunt 20, 30 kilometers per day. Do you think any of your house cats would do that? The answer is no. So that means for both movement, energy expenditure, and volume and intensity of movement are totally different. When I throw a dog from the third floor, it's dead. When I throw a cat, it might highly possibly survive, because the muscles and the strength and the way they are built to create intense muscle tension is totally different. They have different needs, and they have different metabolism, how they go on with their muscles and the energy needs for that. That's why making sport exercise with your dog is far easier than with your cat. But a cat can expend the same amount of energy your Labrador would expend in the whole day in 20 minutes time. That's why they hunt, they lay, they sleep whenever they don't do anything, because they need this energy to survive. And everything else, they need extreme force, all out, and then just lay. Dogs are different. They have different energy expenditure. They can go higher kilometers around. They can just run all the time. And they can still have good energy, but they cannot compete the extreme explosive energy that a cat has. And therefore, if you have a dog that is overweight and you want to bring more exercise in life, then nice walks, playing outside, pulling for instance, I was a student, I had to sleep, and I would bind my towel in my arm, and my little puppy would pull the whole time. So if you can do pulling games, throwing games, fetch and this and chase, whatnot, that's perfect to keep the dog in shape. And that will also change the bone density, the hormonal activity in their body. So they will have more growth factors, which will increase the amount of testosterone, which will increase the amount of the muscles, which will increase the amount of energy usage per kilogram, which will decrease the amount of fat in their body, which will keep them healthy. Very similar to humans. So that's there are a lot of parallels. But if you go to the cats, first of all, most of the cats are not very playful in a sense like the dogs would be playful. They might be with a bell or with laser, but for them, this is just hunting. So the moment the hunting need or the impulse or the drive is gone, they would like to rest. So you have to find out how you can activate the hunting impulse, how you can bring them to do these extreme moves like jumping from one to another window and everything, so that they expend that energy, this explosive energy, quickly, and then rest again. And this will keep them really healthy, because this is how they're built. Right? Does it make sense?
Yeah, definitely. It makes sense to me. Definitely. Yeah. So have fun with this, guys. And what I would encourage people to do is, if you've got an overweight dog, for example, don't suddenly start tripling the length of its walk. Build up gradually, be sensible, because you don't want to put too much stress on the joints. And the one thing I would say is when you're throwing stuff for your dogs, do be careful, because you've got to balance those explosiveness with the twisting and turning. Because if you've got an overweight dog, you want to initially minimize sort of tight twists and turns that could. So we're seeing a lot of dogs with cruciate ligament issues and everything. So we just got
hip issues. Yeah, huge hip issues. Well. Yeah.
So build up a basic level of fitness first before you start doing any sharp twists and turns and things like that would be really good. And thank you, Tiger Sweet. It is the start of a new thing, and it would just be wonderful for that. So
Yeah, and let us follow you. So if you have any news or something, let us know. If you see big changes, if you are working in a rescue, then we would like to know about it.
yeah, it is really good, and also very happy to have suggestions for topics you want us to cover. So I think that's probably as much as we can cover today. Brilliant questions, as always, from everyone. I love getting the feedback from you all about how your pets are. We've had some really, really lovely feedback from people who have transitioned onto the home prepared dog or cat food course, and that's so rewarding. That's why we do it. And I will try, and I've put in a little video up about one of my home prepared dog food courses, just a very rough video that yesterday you can find on my YouTube playlist. Also, I will be doing some more, and we will next week. Timo, what are we going to talk about next week?
I think next week, if we manage, we will show you how to check your cats and dogs without disturbing them, or without even letting them know that you are checking them. But if you can do it playfully, that is very good, because many people check their children all the time, but many people don't know how to check their dogs and cats. So that would be nice. If not, we will go to the labels, how to read your labels. But one of the two will happen next week.
Yeah, brilliant. Okay, lovely. Well, thank you so much all for joining us. And we shall look forward to seeing you all next week, I hope. I think we'll be about 6 o'clock, same time next week, won't we, Timo?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, that's it. But we'll always put it, you'll see it advertised on YouTube, because if through schedules and children and things, if we have to change it slightly, we will do. Thanks so much for joining us. Thank you, Timo. Thank you so much, Andrea. Bye.